Carl Jung's Red Book is one of the most fascinating and deeply personal works in the world of psychology. It is not just a book. It's a visionary journey that traces Jung's encounters with the unconscious during a time of deep personal crisis. The book chronicles his visions, dreams, and paranormal experiences, reflecting his struggle between rationality and the mystical elements of the psyche. Jung, at the crossroads of these two worlds, confronted his own fears, uncertainties, and apocalyptic visions, ultimately using these intense encounters to further his individuation process. Jung's decision to document his visions and encounters in the Red Book was a radical act of self-exploration. It wasn't just about analyzing dreams or visions as a psychologist would. It was about immersing himself in his own psyche, actively engaging with the unconscious. This wasn't simply an intellectual exercise, but an emotional and spiritual journey, one that bridged the gap between the conscious mind and the deeper, often hidden realms of the unconscious. In doing so, Jung not only explored the archetypes within himself, but also uncovered universal truths about the human condition. One of the most striking aspects of Jung's work is his encounter with the spirit world, particularly through figures like Philemon, who became a kind of guide for Jung throughout his journey. These figures weren't just imaginary. They were manifestations of the unconscious, helping Jung navigate the dark corners of his mind. Through this process, he learned to integrate the unconscious, a key step in his concept of individuation. This active dialogue with the unconscious isn't something many people would even dare to attempt, but it was crucial in shaping Jung's understanding of human consciousness and the profound potential for self-creation. Jung's experiences in the Red Book are often likened to shamanic journeys, where the boundaries between the conscious and unconscious blur. Much like shamans, Jung ventured into altered states of consciousness, using his visions to confront and learn from his inner demons. These mystical encounters weren't merely about the paranormal. They were about understanding the psyche's symbolic language, the images and motifs that arise from the collective unconscious. Through these visions, Jung developed tools to heal himself and, later, help others. Ultimately, the Red Book represents much more than just a personal exploration. It's a guide for anyone seeking to confront their unconscious. Jung's journey shows us that by embracing and integrating the shadow parts of ourselves, we can achieve personal transformation. It's not about avoiding the darker aspects of the psyche, but about understanding them and using them to achieve a deeper, more authentic existence. In the same way that Jung faced his apocalyptic visions head-on, we too must face our own unconscious fears in order to move toward true spiritual evolution. Chapter 1: Active Imagination and Personal Transformation. Carl Jung's technique of active imagination is one of the most powerful tools for personal transformation that he introduced. It's a process where you consciously engage with figures, symbols, and elements that arise from your unconscious mind. This method isn't about simply analyzing dreams or memories. It's about becoming fully immersed in the images, voices, and feelings that emerge when the conscious mind steps aside. It's a dynamic dialogue between the conscious and unconscious, much like a conversation with parts of yourself you didn't even know existed. This technique is an essential part of the individuation process, helping people integrate their shadow and higher self into a more unified existence. Through active imagination, Jung learned to confront the different aspects of his psyche, especially the repressed and disowned parts. One of the most profound examples of this process is his encounters with figures like Philemon, who represented wisdom and spiritual guidance. Jung didn't just engage with these figures in a passive way. He dialogued with them, learning from their messages and integrating their wisdom into his everyday life. It's this type of engagement that leads to personal growth as we confront our deepest fears, desires, and contradictions, and move toward a holistic self. Imagine what could happen if you used active imagination in your own life. For example, when you feel overwhelmed by a challenging situation or stuck in a negative emotional loop, you could use active imagination to visualize the source of these feelings as an external figure, perhaps as a symbolic character that embodies the problem. Then, you could enter into dialogue with this figure, asking it questions about its origins and the lessons it holds for you. This process can bring incredible insight and clarity, helping you transform difficult emotions into actionable wisdom. Just like Jung's transformation, this practice can lead to profound healing and understanding. The beauty of active imagination is that it doesn't require years of training or psychoanalysis. It's something anyone can start practicing today. It's simply about intentionally engaging with your unconscious and allowing it to reveal its secrets. Jung believed that when we suppress or ignore these aspects of ourselves, they manifest in destructive or disruptive ways, often through psychological disturbances or emotional imbalances. By actively engaging with these elements, we allow them to be heard, understood, and integrated into our conscious identity. Ultimately, the process of active imagination is about self-creation. It's about consciously deciding who you are and what you want to become, rather than letting your unconscious desires and fears control you. Jung's work shows us that personal transformation comes from the ability to dialogue with the unconscious and integrate its wisdom into the everyday self. This approach doesn't just heal past wounds. It shapes a future where we are in control of our own growth, constantly evolving toward a more authentic version of ourselves. Chapter 2: Synchronicity and Meaningful Coincidences. Synchronicity is one of the most fascinating concepts introduced by Carl Jung, and it's a principle that challenges the conventional understanding of cause and effect. Jung defines synchronicity as the meaningful coincidence of events or experiences that appear to be unrelated but have a deep, symbolic connection. Imagine running into an old friend at a cafe on the same day you've been thinking about them for weeks. Or perhaps hearing a song that reflects exactly what you're feeling at a particular moment. These seemingly random events are not mere chance. They are glimpses into a deeper, interconnected reality that operates beyond our typical understanding of time and space. At the heart of synchronicity is the idea that the unconscious mind is constantly interacting with the world in ways we don't always see. It's as though our inner world and the outer world are in constant dialogue, reflecting each other. Jung suggested that these meaningful coincidences arise when we are in tune with our personal growth or undergoing significant spiritual development. They act as guides, helping us navigate life's uncertainties and challenges. By recognizing these moments of synchronicity, we can begin to understand how deeply our psyche is connected to the unfolding of events in the world around us. Think about how synchronicity has played a role in your life. Maybe you've had a moment where a dream you had the night before seemed to unfold in your waking life the next day. Or perhaps you were contemplating an important decision when an unexpected event, like a chance encounter with a stranger, provided exactly the insight you needed. These experiences are more than coincidences. They're signals from the unconscious, helping us connect the dots and align with a greater flow of life. By paying attention to these synchronicities, you can start to see the deeper meaning in the events around you, instead of viewing them as mere chance. Jung's exploration of synchronicity is deeply connected to the idea of the collective unconscious, which suggests that we all share a deep reservoir of archetypes and symbolic images. These symbols and patterns are not only reflected in our dreams, but they also manifest in our waking life through synchronicities. This idea opens up a whole new level of understanding. What if the world around you is not just random, but a mirror of the archetypes that reside within your unconscious mind? This is the essence of synchronicity. It reveals the hidden threads connecting our inner world to the outer world. Understanding and embracing synchronicity can lead to profound spiritual growth. It's a sign that you are moving in the right direction and that you are being guided by forces larger than yourself. Just as Jung used synchronicity to navigate his own spiritual journey, you too can begin to notice the hidden patterns in your own life. By acknowledging these coincidences, you open yourself up to deeper insight and wisdom. Rather than viewing the world as chaotic and random, you start to see it as an interconnected system of meaning, where everything, every experience, every moment holds significance. Synchronicity is more than just a concept. It's a tool for self-awareness and spiritual development. As you begin to notice and reflect on these meaningful coincidences, you'll realize that the universe is constantly communicating with you, helping you grow, evolve, and align with your life purpose. The more you pay attention to these moments, the more you will see how your life is unfolding in a way that is far from random. It's deeply connected to the universal laws of existence. The more you recognize these synchronicities, the more you will feel a sense of peace and alignment with the world around you. Chapter 3: Faustian Bargain and Psychological Tensions. Carl Jung's work often draws comparisons to the Faustian bargain, a metaphor for the tension between intellectual pursuits and the deeper, more spiritual aspects of life. The term Faustian bargain comes from the famous German legend of Faust, a scholar who sells his soul to the devil in exchange for knowledge and worldly pleasures. Similarly, Jung's psychological journey can be seen as a metaphorical battle between rational thought and spiritual insight. In his personal and professional life, he often found himself at odds with the rapid rise of industrialization and the mechanization of society, which echoed the Faustian desire for progress without considering the spiritual or emotional consequences. Jung's apocalyptic visions during this time were deeply influenced by the psychological tensions within him. He was witnessing the rise of modernity, where science and technology were rapidly advancing. Yet human beings were losing touch with the soul and the spiritual aspects of life. In his view, the Faustian bargain wasn't just a personal dilemma, it was a societal crisis. As Europe was caught up in the throes of industrialization and mechanization, Jung saw that rationalism was pushing humanity further away from the spiritual truths he believed were essential for personal evolution. The psychological tension that came from this societal shift mirrored the internal battle he was facing. For Jung, the Faustian bargain was not just an external phenomenon, but an internal struggle between his conscious and unconscious minds. On one hand, his rational mind, shaped by years of scientific study, urged him to pursue knowledge through logical reasoning. On the other hand, his unconscious mind, brimming with visions and symbolic imagery, pushed him to explore the mystical and spiritual dimensions of existence. The tension between these two forces created an internal conflict that mirrored the external Faustian dilemma. It was only through engaging with his unconscious, particularly through his active imagination, that Jung was able to reconcile this tension and move toward a more holistic self-creation. This internal tension can be seen in the broader context of human psychology. Throughout history, many individuals have faced the Faustian bargain, choosing between the rational mind and the spiritual journey. Nietzsche's concept of the Übermensch or the Superman also echoes this idea, emphasizing the importance of embracing both intellectual and spiritual growth. Just as Faust made a pact with the devil to gain knowledge, many individuals today find themselves caught between the demands of modern society, which often prioritizes rational thinking, and the call of spirituality and self-exploration. This tension is not something to be feared. Instead, it can be a powerful tool for personal development. For anyone on a spiritual journey, Understanding the Faustian bargain and the psychological tensions it embodies is essential. It's about recognizing the trade-offs between intellectual pursuits and spiritual growth. The key is to find balance, to embrace both the rational and irrational aspects of the self, and to avoid becoming consumed by one side. Jung's work shows us that true transformation occurs when we integrate these seemingly opposing forces, conscious and unconscious, rational and spiritual, into a more unified sense of self. By doing so, we can move toward a more authentic existence, where personal growth and spirituality coexist harmoniously. Chapter 4. Shamanism and the Unconscious. Jung's exploration of shamanism is a fascinating aspect of his work, particularly because it offers insight into how individuals can tap into the unconscious through rituals and spiritual practices. Jung saw shamans as unique figures who were able to directly engage with the unconscious, accessing realms that most people are disconnected from. In many ways, shamanism represents one of the earliest forms of psychological exploration. Long before terms like active imagination or dream analysis became popular in modern psychology, shamans were not just healers or spiritual leaders. They were also psychological explorers, adept at navigating the depths of the unconscious. Through rituals, ceremonies, and altered states of consciousness, shamans have long been able to connect with the spiritual world and access symbolic visions that reveal the hidden aspects of the psyche. Jung viewed this as not only a way of healing, but also a method of understanding and integrating the archetypes and unconscious energies that shape human experience. Just as Jung confronted his visions in the Red Book, shamans confront the unconscious forces that affect both the individual and the collective psyche. Their journeys into altered states serve as a means to transmute negative energies and heal emotional wounds, bringing balance to the person and society. In many ways, Jungian psychology aligns with shamanic practices, especially when considering the journey of individuation. Just as a shaman might travel to the spirit world for guidance, Jung's concept of active imagination serves a similar purpose. By engaging with the unconscious through visionary practices, we can bring back insights that guide us on our spiritual path. The process is about engaging with the unseen, the mysterious forces that shape our emotions, thoughts, and experiences, and bringing them into the light of conscious awareness. For Jung, this process is an essential part of self-creation. Shamanism's deep connection to the unconscious is also reflected in the way shamans use symbolic language to understand the world. Like Jung's work with symbols and archetypes, shamans rely on images, myths, and stories to make sense of their inner experiences. These symbols carry profound meanings that can unlock hidden wisdom and insight, which are essential for personal transformation. The unconscious speaks to us in symbols, and just like a shaman who decodes a vision, we can decode our own internal imagery to understand the deeper layers of our psyche. Ultimately, the connection between shamanism and the unconscious offers a rich landscape for self-exploration. Both Jung and shamans understood the importance of engaging with the unconscious in order to heal and grow. Whether through rituals, dreams, or active imagination, the unconscious holds the key to profound personal growth and spiritual evolution. As we deepen our understanding of these processes, we can move closer to an integrated self, one that embraces both the light and dark aspects of the psyche, just as Jung's work in the Red Book illustrates. Chapter 5. Creativity and the Role of the Unconscious. Jung believed that creativity was deeply connected to the unconscious, and in many ways, the unconscious serves as a wellspring of inspiration for the creative process. For him, creativity wasn't merely about the rational mind coming up with ideas. It was a dynamic interaction between the conscious mind and the depths of the psyche. Jung saw the unconscious as a rich source of symbols, images, and archetypes, the raw materials that form the foundation of all creative expression. Whether it's art, writing, music, or any form of personal expression, the unconscious plays a vital role in channeling the authentic self through the process of creativity. For Jung, active imagination was one of the primary tools to access the unconscious and engage with its creative potential. He often encouraged individuals to engage with their inner world, allowing dreams and visions to inform their artistic expression. Jung himself used this method to create some of his most insightful and profound works, including the Red Book, which is filled with symbolic drawings and writings that he created during his deep engagement with the unconscious. The key was not to separate the rational mind from the unconscious, but to integrate both to create a more holistic and authentic creative process. When an artist or creator delves into the unconscious, they often encounter the shadow, the hidden or repressed parts of themselves that are difficult to face. This confrontation is not always easy, and it can be emotionally and psychologically intense. However, it's through this process that true creativity arises. Just like Jung faced his dark visions in the Red Book, creators often confront the darker aspects of their psyche during the creative process. Rather than avoiding these shadows, the act of engaging with them allows for deeper understanding and healing, which ultimately enhances creative expression. The relationship between creativity and the unconscious is also evident in the way ideas and artistic concepts often emerge spontaneously or from seemingly random places. These moments of inspiration feel like they come from outside the self, as though the creator is simply channeling ideas from the universe. This is synchronicity in action, a perfect example of how the unconscious and the outer world are intricately connected. Creators who are open to this connection may find that their work flows more freely as they tap into the deeper currents of universal consciousness. Ultimately, creativity serves as a bridge between the conscious and the unconscious. When we allow ourselves to be open to the messages of the unconscious, whether through dreams, visions, or active imagination, we open up the possibility for true personal growth and spiritual evolution. The unconscious holds the key to unlocking our most profound creative potentials, and engaging with it allows us to create works that are not only innovative, but deeply authentic. In the end, creativity becomes a tool for self-expression, self-discovery, and a powerful means of understanding the deeper truths of the psyche. Chapter 6. The Dangers of Deep Psychological Exploration. Jung's personal journey into the unconscious is a fascinating but cautionary tale about the risks of diving too deeply into the psyche without proper guidance or preparation. In his own work, particularly through his experiences with the Red Book, Jung confronted not only visions and dreams, but also intense psychological disturbances that sometimes felt destabilizing. The unconscious is vast, powerful, and can sometimes lead individuals into psychosis or a breakdown of their mental stability. Jung was well aware that confronting these darker layers of the self could be a double-edged sword. Enlightenment was possible, but so was destruction. One of the key insights Jung gained during his explorations was the need for balance. While engaging with the unconscious was an essential part of the individuation process, Jung understood that diving in too deeply without awareness and discipline could lead to mental health crises. Many people who attempt to explore their unconscious through active imagination or intense shadow work without the proper mental foundation can experience overwhelming emotions, disorientation, or a sense of losing touch with reality. This process can open doors to the unconscious that, if not properly integrated, can lead to paranoia, hallucinations, or identity confusion. Jung himself admitted that his visions during his period of psychological exploration were often disturbing and that he had to navigate these experiences carefully. He did not blindly surrender to every vision or feeling that arose. Instead, he engaged with them critically, seeking meaning and symbolism. In many ways, Jung's approach was a form of self-reflection and discernment, where he learned to separate the authentic from the illusory. For anyone embarking on a similar journey into their own psyche, the danger lies in not having the tools to properly assess what's real and what's a projection of unconscious fears or desires. Self-awareness is critical in this process. Without it, the risk of losing control over one's mental state becomes much higher. Another important lesson from Jung's exploration is the need for guidance. He was fortunate enough to have his mentor, Sigmund Freud, early on in his career, though their eventual split shows the limits of conventional psychological guidance. Modern psychology offers some support, but the spiritual journey that Jung embarked upon was not one that could be fully understood or guided by traditional methods alone. Those looking to explore the depths of the unconscious would benefit from mentorship, whether from experienced therapists, spiritual guides, or even historical texts. The idea is not to walk this path alone, but to seek the wisdom of those who have walked it before, learning from their experiences and avoiding the pitfalls they encountered. While deep psychological exploration can lead to spiritual transformation and personal growth, it must be undertaken with caution and respect. The unconscious is both a source of healing and a potential dangerous force. It's crucial for anyone exploring these realms to maintain a grounded and disciplined approach. Boundaries must be respected, and the process must always be seen as one of integration rather than wholesale immersion. Too often, individuals get lost in the pursuit of deeper self-knowledge without realizing that true wisdom lies in balance, not in getting lost within the labyrinth of the unconscious, but in using it as a tool for evolution and empowerment. In the end, psychological exploration can be an incredibly rewarding journey. But like any journey into unknown territories, it carries inherent risks. The key is not to fear these risks, but to approach them with respect, awareness, and the necessary tools for self-protection. It's important to remember that the unconscious, like any powerful force, can be both a source of creativity and destruction, depending on how it is approached. By integrating the insights of Jung, we learn that balance, awareness, and self-discipline are essential for safely navigating the depths of the psyche and achieving personal growth. Chapter 7. Building Personality Through Shadow Work. Jung's concept of shadow work plays a pivotal role in the process of individuation, or the journey towards becoming a fully integrated and authentic self. The shadow, as Jung described it, represents the unconscious aspects of the personality that are often repressed or denied, those parts of us that we may not want to acknowledge or that society encourages us to suppress. These aspects include dark emotions like anger, jealousy, and fear, as well as traits we view as undesirable or unacceptable. Yet, Jung argued that the shadow is not inherently negative. Rather, it's a necessary part of our psyche that, if integrated, can lead to greater wholeness and authenticity. In the context of building personality, shadow work involves bringing these hidden parts of the self into the light. By acknowledging and embracing the shadow, we expand our understanding of who we are and what we're capable of. Jung believed that when we confront the shadow, we become whole, integrating both our light and dark sides. This process isn't easy, and it often involves emotional turmoil and confronting uncomfortable truths about ourselves. However, it is through this confrontation that we experience personal growth and transformation as the unconscious becomes integrated into the conscious mind. One of the ways that shadow work manifests is through creativity. Jung often used artistic expression as a means of engaging with the unconscious and bringing the shadow to the surface. Writing, painting, and even dance can serve as powerful tools for exploring the depths of the psyche. When we allow ourselves to create freely, without judgment or inhibition, we may find that our shadow emerges in the form of symbols or ideas that reflect our deeper, hidden desires and fears. This self-expression not only allows us to tap into our creative potential, but also provides an outlet for the repressed aspects of the self. By channeling these emotions into artistic outlets, we make them conscious, transforming them into something constructive. Building personality through shadow work is not about eliminating the dark parts of ourselves, but rather integrating them in a healthy and constructive way. As we acknowledge our flaws and contradictions, we stop being controlled by them. For instance, someone who has struggled with rage might channel that energy into assertiveness rather than aggression, using their shadow to empower their communication and personal relationships. In this sense, shadow work leads to self-mastery, the ability to recognize when negative traits arise and consciously redirect them toward more positive outcomes. This form of self-regulation requires awareness, discipline, and a willingness to confront the uncomfortable aspects of the self. The process of integrating the shadow also involves releasing judgments, both of ourselves and others. As we work with our own shadow, we begin to see how others may also be struggling with their hidden fears and desires. This recognition fosters compassion and empathy, as we realize that everyone is on their own journey of self-discovery. Instead of viewing others through the lens of judgment, we can begin to understand them as fellow travelers on the path to wholeness. Through this lens, self-reflection becomes not just an individual process, but a means of building deeper, more meaningful connections with others. Ultimately, shadow work is an ongoing process of self-construction. It is not a one-time event, but a continuous journey of self-awareness, learning, and growth. As we work to understand and integrate our shadows, we begin to build a personality that is authentic, balanced, and whole. This process leads to freedom from the limitations imposed by the unconscious mind, freedom from societal conditioning, and freedom to express our true selves. In this sense, shadow work is not only a path to personal growth, but also a means of spiritual evolution, as we move closer to becoming the person we were always meant to be. Chapter 8. The Dangers of Deep Psychological Exploration. While Jung's explorations into the unconscious offer profound insights into the nature of the psyche and spiritual growth, they also come with significant risks. Diving too deeply into the unconscious without proper guidance can result in psychological breakdowns or emotional destabilization. Jung himself encountered intense visions and moments of psychosis as he explored his unconscious mind in the Red Book. These experiences, while valuable, also presented the danger of losing touch with reality. Jung's journey serves as a cautionary tale. The depths of the unconscious are vast and can lead to disorientation and psychological turmoil if approached recklessly. One of the main challenges in psychological exploration is the potential for ego dissolution. As individuals confront the shadow, the darker, repressed aspects of the psyche, they may experience a breakdown of the self. This can lead to a loss of identity or a feeling of being consumed by the unconscious. In extreme cases, this can spiral into psychosis or the dissociation of the mind. However, the danger here lies not in confronting the unconscious itself, but in doing so without the tools and awareness needed to process these experiences. Jung himself navigated these waters carefully, using active imagination to engage with his visions in a controlled manner. Without such practices, deep psychological exploration can easily lead to mental fragmentation rather than healing. The process of individuation requires a delicate balance between the conscious and unconscious minds, The unconscious holds valuable insights and wisdom, but it also houses unresolved trauma, repressed emotions, and fearful impulses. Engaging with these elements can lead to psychological instability if not handled with care. It is essential to integrate the unconscious in a gradual and mindful way, allowing each revelation to unfold naturally, rather than forcing oneself into deeper territories too quickly. Without a solid foundation in self-awareness and emotional regulation, the intensity of this process can be overwhelming, leading to further disturbances in mental health. Furthermore, deep psychological exploration can sometimes lead to over-identification with the unconscious. As individuals delve into their visions, dreams, or archetypes, they may begin to believe that these symbols are the true essence of who they are. This over-identification can lead to disconnectedness from the external world, as the person becomes consumed by their inner world. The key is to recognize that these visions and symbols are representations of deeper truths, but do not define the totality of the self. Maintaining a sense of balance and grounding is essential to prevent becoming lost in the maze of the unconscious. The danger of deep psychological exploration also lies in the potential influence of external forces. Just as Jung's encounters with spirits and visions shaped his understanding of the unconscious, so too can external experiences influence an individual's psychological state. This is especially true in today's world, where social, cultural, and even technological influences can cloud our understanding of the self. Without a solid foundation in self-awareness and discernment, individuals may be susceptible to external projections or societal pressures that distort their sense of reality. Jung's emphasis on individuation underscores the importance of developing an inner strength and sense of authenticity to resist these external influences. Ultimately, while psychological exploration offers the potential for profound growth and spiritual evolution, it must be approached with respect, awareness, and guidance. Jung's work teaches us that the unconscious is a source of great power and wisdom, but can also be a force that overwhelms those who are not prepared to face its depths. Through self-discipline, active imagination, and careful integration, we can unlock the transformative potential of the unconscious without falling prey to its dangers. It is only through balance and self-reflection that we can navigate the complexities of the psyche and achieve personal growth without sacrificing mental health. Chapter 9. The Metaphor of the Table and the Suspension Above It. Jung often used metaphors to illustrate profound psychological truths, and one of the most compelling is the table metaphor. This metaphor is used to describe how people tend to anchor their sense of security in external, temporary things, such as money, status, or relationships. Just like a table depends on its four legs for stability, individuals often base their emotional well-being on factors outside of themselves. But what happens when those external legs are removed? The table collapses, leaving the person without a foundation. Jung's lesson here is clear. True stability doesn't come from these fleeting, material aspects, but from a deeper connection to higher principles and spiritual wisdom. This metaphor extends beyond mere materialism. Jung was pointing to the instability of relying too heavily on anything that is external. Whether it's a job, a relationship, or even a particular lifestyle, these things can change unexpectedly. Life is constantly shifting, and so to place all of our security on something that is ultimately unstable leads to anxiety and fear. The challenge, therefore, is to anchor oneself not to the table of external conditions, but to the internal foundation of spiritual principles and self-awareness. By focusing on what cannot be taken away, such as virtue, wisdom, and personal integrity, we can create a resilient foundation that withstands any external disturbance. The suspension above the table symbolizes detachment from these temporary sources of security. Jung's message here is one of detachment from material conditions, not in the sense of rejecting life's pleasures, but rather in not allowing them to define our worth. By transcending the need for constant external validation, one can rise above the chaotic fluctuations of the world and achieve a higher state of spiritual freedom. This detachment is not about renunciation. It's about recognizing that our true power and security come from within, from our ability to remain anchored in our inner wisdom and personal values. Jung also drew parallels between the concept of suspension and freedom. Those who rely solely on external factors for their stability are, in a sense, bound by those things. They are tied to the ebb and flow of external conditions, perpetually seeking validation or security from the outside world. But when we learn to detach from these influences and suspend ourselves above them, we reclaim our freedom. This is not freedom from the world itself, but freedom from the chains of external dependence. We become empowered by our inner resources, able to navigate the ups and downs of life with greater ease and clarity. The practice of self-reflection is essential in achieving this state of suspension. Just as a table must be regularly checked for stability, we must continually assess the sources of our own sense of security. Are we dependent on fleeting pleasures or external validation? Or have we built a solid, internal foundation grounded in self-awareness and spiritual growth? This introspection allows us to adjust our focus and ensure that we are not allowing external circumstances to dictate our inner peace. The ability to remain detached from temporary fluctuations is a critical skill on the path to self-mastery and inner peace. Ultimately, the table metaphor invites us to reconsider what we rely on for our sense of stability. If we seek security only in the external world, we risk collapsing under the weight of change. However, by shifting our focus to higher, more stable principles, we can remain rooted in the face of adversity and rise above the fleeting tides of life. This shift in perspective leads to personal empowerment, enabling us to navigate life with a sense of freedom and purpose. Chapter 10. The Consequences of Pleasure and Suffering. Jung's work often explored the delicate balance between pleasure and suffering, two forces that drive much of human experience. The law of cause and effect reminds us that every action, thought, and emotion has consequences. This includes the pursuit of pleasure, a fundamental part of life that can offer moments of happiness, but also lead to unintended consequences if indulged in excessively. Jung recognized that when we seek pleasure without consideration for the long-term impact, we often sow the seeds for suffering. This might manifest as addiction, overindulgence, or an inability to find lasting satisfaction, as the pursuit of immediate gratification rarely leads to true fulfillment. Similarly, suffering, though often seen in a negative light, can also serve as a powerful teacher. Jung suggested that suffering is a necessary part of the spiritual and psychological journey. Just as pain can break down the ego and force us to confront our deepest fears, pleasure can sometimes lull us into complacency. The paradox is that while we may seek pleasure to avoid suffering, the inability to face suffering head-on can perpetuate cycles of avoidance, leaving us more vulnerable to future suffering. In this sense, suffering can be seen not as an enemy, but as a catalyst for growth and transformation. It's through the challenge of enduring suffering that we find the potential to rise above it, develop resilience, and achieve a deeper understanding of ourselves. One of the primary lessons of Jung's work is that both pleasure and suffering are inevitable aspects of the human experience. Instead of seeking to avoid one or the other, the goal is to learn how to balance them. This concept ties into the Hermetic principle of polarity, which teaches that opposites are often simply different degrees of the same energy. Just as day follows night, and light follows darkness, pleasure and suffering are two sides of the same coin. By embracing both with awareness, we can navigate them more effectively, learning to live fully without becoming consumed by either. This balance allows for a life of greater awareness, where both the highs and the lows are seen as opportunities for self-discovery and growth. A key to understanding the consequences of pleasure and suffering lies in moral development and virtue. Pleasure without virtue can lead to excess, while suffering without purpose can breed resentment. To live a life that is balanced and meaningful, we must cultivate wisdom, choosing actions that lead to long-term well-being rather than short-term satisfaction. This requires us to transcend the immediate gratification that often dominates our desires, and instead focus on choices that align with our higher values and life purpose. It's through this conscious decision-making that we find true fulfillment, as we learn to resist the pull of fleeting pleasures and instead embrace the deeper rewards that come with self-discipline and virtuous living. Finally, humility plays a crucial role in navigating the consequences of pleasure and suffering. Humility allows us to approach both with a mindset of acceptance, knowing that neither is permanent or entirely under our control. When we embrace suffering with humility, we can transform it into a source of wisdom and insight. And when we experience pleasure, we do so with awareness, appreciating it without becoming attached to it. By adopting this balanced perspective, we can find peace in the ebb and flow of life, recognizing that both pleasure and suffering are part of the greater cycle of existence. Ultimately, this wisdom empowers us to navigate the challenges of life with greater grace and strength, leading us towards self-mastery and inner peace. Chapter 11. The Influence of Thought and Decision-Making. Jung's exploration of the mind and consciousness brings us to one of the most profound aspects of human experience, the power of thought and decision-making. Every thought we have shapes our reality, creating ripples that affect not only our internal world, but also our external circumstances. Jung emphasized that conscious thought is an active force, a force that can either propel us toward growth or trap us in limiting patterns. The challenge lies in understanding how our thoughts are often influenced by external forces, such as societal expectations, family conditioning, and the collective unconscious. These influences may not always align with our true self, and often they lead to decisions that are more reactive than proactive. Jung argued that to achieve spiritual growth and self-awareness, we must move beyond the influence of automated thinking and make decisions based on conscious reflection. This requires mindfulness, the ability to recognize when we're being influenced by unconscious drives or societal conditioning. By becoming aware of these influences, we can begin to question our thought patterns and actively choose thoughts that align with our authentic self. It's only by recognizing the subtle ways in which we're being swayed that we can take full responsibility for our decisions and begin to shape our lives consciously, rather than merely reacting to life circumstances. Jung's concept of individuation underscores the importance of making decisions that reflect our true identity rather than societal expectations. Too often, people make decisions based on what others expect of them or what society deems as right, without ever considering their own authentic desires and values. This can lead to feelings of discontent and dissatisfaction, as individuals realize they've been living someone else's version of their life. By embracing self-reflection and understanding our unconscious motivations, we can begin to make choices that align with our true path and life purpose. This journey of self-discovery, though difficult, is necessary for personal fulfillment and spiritual evolution. One of the most powerful tools for influencing our decisions is positive thinking and mental discipline. Just as Jung emphasized the importance of active imagination in connecting with the unconscious, so too can we use positive mental techniques to cultivate a mindset that supports our goals. Visualization, affirmations, and deliberate focus on desired outcomes are all ways to shift our internal state and create the conditions for success. However, this is not about wishful thinking or mindless optimism. Rather, it's about using our minds intentionally to create the reality we wish to experience. The thoughts we choose to focus on create our beliefs, which in turn drive our actions and ultimately shape our reality. Decision-making is also intricately tied to emotional intelligence. In many ways, thought and emotion are interconnected, and a decision made in emotional turmoil can often lead to regret. Jung's work on the shadow illustrates the importance of integrating both light and dark aspects of our psyche to make more balanced, conscious decisions. Emotions, when properly understood, are not something to be feared or suppressed, but rather a guiding force in our decision-making process. By learning to balance both thought and emotion, we can make choices that are not only rational, but also resonate deeply with our inner truth. This balance is key to making empowered decisions that reflect the true desires of our soul. Finally, the influence of thought and decision-making extends to society as a whole. As more individuals become aware of how their thoughts influence their decisions, we can create a collective shift in how we approach challenges and opportunities. If we can each learn to make decisions based on conscious reflection and self-awareness, we create a ripple effect that influences those around us. Just as one individual can change their life by becoming more intentional in their decision-making, a society that embraces conscious living can shift toward a more enlightened, harmonious existence. This is the power of individual responsibility and collective consciousness working together to shape the future. Chapter 12. Overcoming the fear of change. The fear of change is one of the most paralyzing forces in human life. It can prevent us from pursuing new opportunities, confronting uncomfortable truths, and growing into the person we are meant to become. Jung often discussed how self-awareness is the key to understanding and overcoming this fear. He believed that fear is often the product of the unconscious mind, those aspects of the psyche that are hidden from us. These unconscious fears can influence our thoughts and actions in ways we don't fully understand. The first step in overcoming the fear of change is recognizing that it exists within us, often without us even realizing it. Through self-reflection and consciousness, we can begin to uncover these hidden fears and understand where they come from. One of the most important tools for overcoming the fear of change is courage. Jung emphasized that true courage isn't the absence of fear, but the willingness to face it head-on and move forward anyway. Courage requires a deep understanding of one's own inner strength and the belief that, even in the face of uncertainty, we have the resilience to handle whatever comes our way. Courage also involves trusting in the process of life and knowing that, as long as we stay true to our values and authentic self, change can be a force for good. The fear of change often arises from not knowing what will happen next. But by cultivating faith in ourselves and the universe, we can find the strength to embrace change rather than resist it. Jung also believed that the fear of change is closely tied to our attachment to the past. We often fear the unknown because we are attached to what is familiar, even if that familiarity isn't serving us well. Letting go of the past, whether that means old habits, old relationships, or old beliefs, can be one of the hardest things to do. Yet, it is only by releasing these attachments that we can move forward and allow new experiences to shape our lives. Self-transmutation, the process of transforming our old selves into something more aligned with our true nature, is essential for personal growth. This requires not just accepting change, but actively seeking it, knowing that it is through change that we evolve into the person we are meant to be. The fear of change can also stem from a deep-seated need for control. Many people resist change because it feels like they are losing control over their lives. However, as Jung pointed out, control is often an illusion. Life is full of unpredictability, and while we can guide ourselves through it with intention, we cannot control every outcome. Part of overcoming the fear of change involves embracing the uncertainty of life and learning to flow with it. By letting go of the need to control every aspect of our lives, we open ourselves up to the infinite possibilities that change can bring. This is where synchronicity comes into play. When we align with the flow of life, we find that events unfold in a way that feels meaningful and purposeful. Finally, overcoming the fear of change requires decisiveness. Indecision is a powerful force that keeps us stuck in place, unable to move forward. Jung's philosophy encourages us to take bold action, even in the face of uncertainty. Change often requires leaving behind the old and stepping into the unknown. This can be terrifying, but by making the decision to embrace change and trust the process, we create a path forward. Even small, incremental changes can have a profound impact on our lives. Decision-making is an essential skill for overcoming fear, as it empowers us to take control of our own journey, rather than allowing fear to dictate our choices. Conclusion: will you take the principles of synchronicity, vision, and self-transformation and put them into practice? You've just taken the first step into understanding the Red Book, one of the most enigmatic works in the history of psychology. But this is only the beginning. By embracing Jung's approach to the unconscious, you have the opportunity to embark on a transformative journey, one that requires you to confront your inner darkness and integrate it with your conscious mind. As Jung showed us, the unconscious is not something to fear, but something to engage with. Through active imagination, dream analysis, and the courage to face your shadow, you unlock the potential to evolve into a more whole version of yourself. But here's the real question: are you ready to apply what you've learned? Will you take the principles of synchronicity, vision, and self-transformation and put them into practice? It's one thing to read about these concepts, but it's another to live them. Your growth depends on your willingness to take action, to embrace the visions, face the unconscious, and allow yourself to transcend the limits of the ego. If you can do that, you will begin to see the shifts not only in your inner world but in the outer world around you. Now, ask yourself, what is the next step in your own personal evolution? How can you begin to explore the unconscious mind and allow it to guide you toward deeper self-awareness? I invite you to take the insights from this video and make them a part of your daily life. Whether through dream journaling, active imagination, or simply being open to the subtle messages of the unconscious, every moment is an opportunity for growth. The path to self-mastery is not easy, but it is worth it. If you're ready to dive even deeper into the fascinating world of Jungian psychology, make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. This is just the beginning of your transformational journey, and you won't want to miss the next step. What will your next vision be? And how will you manifest your deepest potential into reality? Let's continue this journey together.